What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Bally went through a couple different designs for their score motors, which are the brains of any EM. If you've been following along in the series, we've talked about Exhibit and Gottlieb. Well, today we're talking about Bally, and based on the type of machine they were manufacturing and the year, their score motor design changed a bit. It went from a single disc that would rotate along what was essentially a stepper face, similar to the search disc in a bingo or the spotting disc in a bingo. These control units are very simple and are not at all like the complex control units that they later formulated for the horse race games and the bingos. Later on, Bally would take the design of the control unit, and that very much informed their EM score motor design. The typical Bally score motor looks almost exactly like a control unit, except for a few notable differences. The first is that there are no clutches. This means that the machine cannot turn portions of the score motor separately from other portions. In other words, once the motor is rotating, it has to continue to rotate all of the cams at the same time, and not a portion, as in the bingos. Another difference is that there is no complex search or spotting disc at the end of this motor shaft. It's only the motor, followed by several cams lined up behind them, each with their own stack of switches on top. Now the entire stack actuates at the same time, so on each cam, if you picture a row of cams 10, 12 stacks deep, on each of those is a stack of switches, and each stack is comprised of 4, 5, or 6 state-changing switches, either normally closed, normally open, or alternating. Now, because of this design, with the switch stacks stacked on top of the cams, it is relatively easy to access and clean every switch in the score motor, should you need to. It is a whole heck of a lot easier to adjust and clean the score motor switches in a Bally than it is in a Gottlieb. And perhaps there are some Gottlieb experts out there who have repaired way more than I have, but it is my experience that it is really easy to work on a Bally score motor as compared to a Gottlieb. Now, there's always a trade-off for that, and that's that the switches in the Bally score motor can become fouled or misadjusted more easily. Your switch stacks are typically 4, 5, 6, or more switches deep on each cam, as I mentioned, and so there's more opportunity for dirt to creep in, and the orientation of the switches being parallel to the bottom of the cabinet means that gravity is not your friend. So if there's a piece of dirt that somehow manages to fall from the playfield, it's going to land on, say, one of the score motor stacks. And as the score motor turns, it's going to move that switch stack up and down and eventually shaking that piece of dirt into the score motor switches. That's a pretty unlikely scenario, but it can happen. So that dirt that accrues in there comes from somewhere. Most likely years in neglect, but that's another story. So, getting back to Bally Score Motors, they are my favorite to work on. They beat out every other manufacturer. I'll very soon be talking about Williams, but they are the easiest, I think, to work on. There are no gotchas like there are with Williams. Not that it's a big gotcha, but it's one that can happen. And they're relatively straightforward, simple state changers. So they're typically located in the middle left of the bottom of the cab. As I mentioned in my Gottlieb Score Motor podcast, a common problem on these is, as with any score motor really, that the index switch or the runout switch will become fouled or open or closed and will either run the score motor constantly or not run it at all. Now, the difference between this and the Gottlieb is that it is very simple to adjust the switch and also see that the switch is not changing state appropriately. On the Gottlieb, it's more important to utilize a piece of paper or business card or something so that you can isolate that switch stack visually from the rest. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge. And you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. And a special treat for those of you who were able to order t-shirts. They just came in today, the 23rd of July. So I will be sending those out here very, very soon. I'm getting all the postage supplies tomorrow, but they should be in the mail on Friday. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.